Right, I think we better begin. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I think the attendees are starting to come up now, so with that, let's start. So in terms of the webinar itself, there's a couple of things just to highlight. If you'd like to pose a question to any of us, the Q&A feature or the chat feature is probably the best bet. That should all be working now. And if you have any technical issues throughout the webinar, please just post them in the chat function. My colleague Jodie should be able to help you. Throughout the webinar, we'll be launching 2 polls, so please keep an eye out for them. There'll be one midway through and one toward the end. So if you could please participate, it helps us shape any future webinars we may be doing and kind of tailor our content toward what you all want to learn about. So a little introduction to our panelists today. We've got 2 people from Sharp and 1 from KCS Procurement Services. So from Sharp, we have Ben Welton, Director of Education and Managed Services, who will be sharing his expertise within the education sector, the challenges and trends the sector faces, and how digital transformation is evolving within the education sector. Also from Sharp, we have Matt Riley, Director of Transformation and Security. And Matt will be sharing his expertise on cybersecurity, as well as providing you with some practical tips which you can take home and apply to improve the security of your organisation. Finally, we have Stefanie Manley from KCS. Steph's a Senior Framework Manager, and she will be taking us through the procurement challenges that face the education sector and the role that frameworks play in providing simple solutions. So before we begin, just a little bit of background as to who Sharp are. We recently celebrated our 100th birthday last year. And throughout that time, we've remained innovative, creating many industry-first products and technologies. Some of you may know us better for the consumer side of the business, so calculators, microwaves, music, systems, and televisions, and so on. Although today we'll be focusing on a newer area of our services, which is IT. We offer a range of services now from, as I mentioned, IT to print and print management, document management and workflow, audio visual solutions, office furniture and design, and digital transformation services. So without further ado, let me hand you over to one of our partners, Stefanie from KCS Procurement Services, and she can tell you a little bit more about what they do.
Hi everybody. So as you know, I'm the Senior Framework Manager at KCS Procurement Services. So some of you will have heard of us, some of you may have heard of another part of our organisation, KCS Education. We have been doing frameworks now for well over 30 years. We are part of the Commercial Services Group, and that group is wholly owned by Kent County Council. So all of the frameworks that we do, same as every other framework that is run, has to be compliant to public contract regulations. We will also be involved in the new ones, as they do everything that the customer does when they use our framework will be fully compliant with the most up-to-date regulation. We have multiple frameworks covering everything from facilities to fleet. This specific one that we're talking about today will cover the digital transformation. So there is multiple ones that you can use, and all of our frameworks come with the benefits of having our support. So we will be involved as little or as much as a customer would like us to be. So we can actually run further competitions, we can give you support and advice on procuring compliantly with the direct rewards function. So this is free of charge. So we don't offer, we don't charge for anything that we do. We just make sure that our sole focus is that a customer is able to procure compliantly, and also that they don't out of any terms and conditions that will go. We know that there have been many that have happened in the past. We do support customers in getting them out of some of these contracts and into something that is much more favourable and safe for them to use. And I think that's really it on our bit. I've covered both slides.
So our agenda today and the topics that we'll be covering, the educational sector and the challenges and trends that it's facing. What is digital transformation and how can it benefit your school? Cybersecurity, what should schools be doing to protect themselves? IT recruitment and outsourcing, the Cyber Essentials scheme, which is a scheme that schools can be involved in to gain accreditation. The benefits of outsourcing IT services, educational procurement, and then toward the kind of final 15 minutes, we'll be opening the session up for a Q&A where you can ask our panelists any questions you may have. Ben, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Billy. Hi, everybody. Yeah, just a brief run through about the challenges that we're facing within the educational industry and some trends that we can adopt and use to alleviate those challenges. So what we're finding is that we've got increasingly younger workforce with a much higher expectation of technology, both within staff and academia and within the pupils themselves. 5-year-olds expect technology in the learning environment now, and no longer is technology better in the workplace than at home. So we've got a real challenge there to make it an engaging way to learn, an engaging way to work, because it's a competitive market out there for staff and for pupils. And everybody's looking to sort of develop a digital experience, and what's that going to mean? What's that going to do? How's that going to support better ways of learning? But we've also got to acknowledge that schools are now a target for cyber criminals, and so we've got to make sure that we are safe and secure whilst we migrate into a digital world. And then off the back of that, of course, we've got compliance and safeguarding that we need to be aware of. And then a final challenge at the moment, particularly post-pandemic, is around recruitment. I mean, it's hard enough for businesses to recruit IT and technology professionals at the moment because it's such a competitive market out there. But what with job gradings and increasingly stringent budgets, it's even harder for schools and academia to recruit. Businesses can throw money at it, whereas we can't do that within the educational market. So if I move on now into sort of run through what is digital transformation. And actually, when you look at it, you might not believe it, but education has been far in advance of a lot of businesses in its use of technology, particularly in around how we educate our students. And modern techniques have been in classrooms for 10, 15 years, whereas if you look in businesses, they really only just started to adopt these forms of techniques within the workplace. But also we're able to protect pupil and teacher information far more than we ever have before through the use of MIS systems. And again, way ahead of a lot of businesses who really have only started to look at those sort of techniques and adoptions during the pandemic. And then finally, we can improve the way we assess and track student progress. I'm a parent, I'm a governor, and it never ceases to amaze me just how much data and information I can access with my children, but also with the children of the school I'm a governor of that support. So I think it's a fantastic tool and service that we can provide for all stakeholders within the school. So why do we do it? Why digital transformation? It's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but what does it actually mean for us? Well, it means that we can be safer. It means we can be smarter. Means we could be more efficient and more effective, and that's really important to academia about how we deliver that service, not only for our pupils and for their learning, but also for the staff that work there. And our approach to digital transformation is to understand the client's environments, their future plans, and select the most appropriate way forward, whatever that might be. Not just about saying, let's go, it's actually thinking about what we can do to make it a better environment for everybody within the organisation. If you break it down, there's sort of 4 elements of digital transformation. there's the migration to the cloud. What is that? What will that do? But it's actually about driving efficiencies for the organisation. We've got to do it together. We've got to learn and understand how we're going to do that, and then actually use that technology to start to bring everything together to enable blended learning. It's not just about pupils sitting in a classroom anymore, or it's about students choosing when they might want to learn and when they might want to listen into lectures and classrooms. But we've also got to get our house in order. It's no good just saying, let's take everything we've got and move it all into the cloud, sort of liken it to moving a house. You've got to get rid of all that stuff that's been in the loft for 10 years and clear out the shed. And very much the same here about making sure your data's in the right place. And then we can use artificial intelligence to actually help develop that and transform the organisation we work for. But with all of this, underpinning it, and Matt will come into it later, is about taking security first, starting to look at security before you do anything else, so that we can ensure that we protect where we can against any form of cyber attacks or any form of undesirable behaviour. So if we move on to then, well, how do we start? What do we do? We've got to look at the areas where we want for improvement, a gap analysis to say, look, where are we, what do we need, and what's not working for us? We then got to ask ourselves, can we actually do it? Can we do it ourselves? And if we can't, we need to ask and get somebody else in that can. I think it's really important then, once you've found the gaps, is you spend the time looking and finding services, products, people, teams, businesses, other schools, partners, governors, whoever it might be, to actually help you plug that gap, help you improve. That's really important. You've got to spend the time finding the right tools for you. And then you've got to deliver. You've actually got to get on with it and actually implement a roadmap. We work with clients where we've developed a cloud roadmap for them. So we're going to take the time over the coming years to migrate and to develop and to transform their school or college into a digital environment. And actually we can do that over a number of years, take our time, plug the gaps, move on. And that's really important to make sure you implement it in the right methodical and measured manner. So I'm going to pass you on to Billy now, who's going to run a quick poll.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'd just like to run a quick poll to see what it is about digital transformation that interests our attendees today. That should be live on your screens now, if you could please vote. Okay, I'll end that there. Seems to be three main themes, which are reduced cost, obviously very pertinent at the moment, increased security and GDPR compliance. Matt's slide should help you with that, and increase efficiency and productivity again, and Steph should be able to help you with that. Okay, I'll end that poll there. Thank you all for participating. And I'll move on to the next slide. Matt, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Billy. I've spent, prior to working for Sharp, I worked in the healthcare sectors in the NHS, and during my last few years, I've also been a governor at a school. And one of the things I can really say about the people I got to work with and the teams that I worked with, that none of them got out of bed to think about cybersecurity. It's never been a particular subject of interest to a lot of people, because actually their focus is on care and education. And what this leads to is actually schools and healthcare in particular being quite heavily targeted by these external threat actors that effectively want to create disruption. But more in recently, probably the more last 5 years, that they're there to make money. Historically, these threat actors used to be sort of people in their living rooms or in their bedrooms just looking to make a bit of trouble. But now that's turned into a commercial enterprise, and that's all you can describe it as. They are very clever, they are very motivated, and they're there and they can make a lot of money out of this. So again, if you compare sort of the education sector to the non-education sector, businesses, schools are a focus of attack and a focus for these threat actors, quite significantly compared to businesses. And there's typically quite a few drivers for that. And as we touched on, it's as Ben alluded to earlier on, schools have limited budgets to make sure they look after themselves and the security of their data, the security of everyone, whereas businesses can throw much more money at it. So these threat actors know often schools and education in general is an easier target. So there are some really simple things and day-to-day pieces and some external certifications that hopefully the next few slides will go through that you can implement within your school to help reduce that potential of things going wrong. So the first piece is always around education, because we can sit here and I like to use a Swiss cheese analogy. You can have multiple layers of security, piling security on top of security, but if it's Swiss cheese, there's going to be holes in it, and no security is ever going to be 100%. And the worst case scenario is when all those holes in that Swiss cheese line up, you have a gap. And the weakest link in all of this is often us as the human beings. It is much more difficult to breach a security network than it is to email me pretending to be someone else, and I might fall for it. So actually the core piece that every organization, be that education or be that commercial, is the first objective is to educate your teams of what a breach is. Breach is a horrible, horrible word because it means many, many things to different people. A breach, typically you hear about in the news when it hits a big multinational, or it gets, or again, it's on the other end of the scale, you have really small scale pieces. So what we hear about every day is, I've been the victim of a phishing attack and someone has got into my account. That is a breach as well. There are definitions of breach under the GDPR and the UK Data Protection Act, but treating a breach as any compromise or any access to any of your systems or any of your data without permission, or it being changed without permission, having that really broad approach to education is really key. And that education doesn't just need to be that sort of technical GDPR training that we all know and love. It's about how to spot a phishing attack. I'm getting an email from someone. I'm not expecting this email, and it's asking me to do something really urgently. These are the things that we need to be, as I've said here on the right-hand side, educating our team, simulating these events because they're very clever and they evolve very quickly, and then understanding these results to tailor future education. We need to better educate our teams on following best practice around GDPR. If you've got a concern, well, this breach has occurred, what do I do? What do I do if X, Y, Z happens? And just to give you some concerning statistics of what it was last year, 50% cybersecurity incidents that ended up getting reported to the Information Commissioner's Office involved phishing. And again, these are targeted attacks often, but sometimes just blanket attacks. And we as the humans are unfortunately that weakest link, because if I got an email reporting to be Ben from Ben and asking me to do something, I trust Ben. I'm going to go, oh, that's from Ben. I will act on what he's asked me to do. And it's those circumstances that these threat actors will take advantage of. And information about us now is wider spread than ever. You can go to LinkedIn, you can see who works in schools, who works in any organization, and that is a really easy way in. So education, simulation, and understanding the outputs of that are, for me, the most important line of defense that any organization in your schools can have. The simulation piece of that is the most important. And we do that in our day-to-day lives as it is. As an example, we do fire alarm drills. We teach the team what to do in the event of a fire alarm. We run drills. Then we understand how quick everyone got out of the building, and if all the school kids were accounted for, and we learn from that. We do it again. That approach to cybersecurity, and in particular phishing simulations, phishing attacks, is the most critical piece at the moment. And there is a repository, and Billy will share some useful links after this webinar. The NCSC, that's the National Cybersecurity Centre, has dedicated information around this to helping and supporting schools. So yeah, Billy will send out a link to everyone after this webinar. So please go and have a look. The next pieces now are much more around some of the security aspects, because although education is by far the most important, getting these things right is just as critical. So there are really a number of pieces, but the first one is what I call managed user privileges. So this is where your team and your teachers and your students can only access what is absolutely essential to them. So we don't want people having more power within the IT than they need to, because if they get exploited and they get compromised, that could then be exploited. Secondly, and again, it alludes to that sort of gap analysis piece Ben was talking about earlier on with that digital transformation. It's doing risk assessments to understand where those gaps are and using that understanding to then put plans in place to close that gap. And that's really critical, because actually what, in the event of things going wrong, the governing bodies and Information Commissioner's Office will ask you, did you know about this as a risk and did you do anything about it? Next piece is to make sure you monitor all your systems for active threats. And that doesn't mean someone sit in front of a screen all day any longer with the big banks of screens and lots of information on it. This is actually having a little trigger set up. So if a teacher is in, a teacher's in school that day, but someone tries to log into her account from another country, that as a trigger can hopefully stop a potential threat coming in, because that's unlikely to be that teacher at that point. Another piece is that control of removable media. So USB sticks, little hard drives. This is typically an internal threat, someone unintentionally, potentially, taking lots of data out of the school on a little hard drive. But the flip side is, a method of attack is that hackers will send to schools a little hard drive saying, please plug me in, the IT team need this, or something similar. And most people wouldn't think that's a problem, and then plug it in. And again, it's a way of introducing a particular threat to your environment. And finally, on this slide, having and communicating an incident management plan and policy. So in the event of something going wrong, people know what to do. Again, taking you back to the fire drills. It is drilled into people what to do in the event of something going wrong, and that needs to be a case, and that needs to be documented. Billy? And finally, on some of the security aspects, and I go back to the analogy I used earlier on around Swiss cheese. It is about having layers, and the more layers you have, hopefully, the more well, increasingly unlikely there is going to be that hole going through the middle of them. So again, firewalls are a technology you place at the edge of your network, and they are traditionally, well, think of them like bouncers. They're going to let you in if you're allowed in, and they're not going to let you in if you're not allowed in. So those firewalls are your gateway to everything that's inside. Every device that's within your network, you need to have antivirus, you need to have anti-malware, you need to have also isolation. And that final one, auto isolation, being relatively new, because of the threat of ransomware. What would typically happen, bit of ransomware, people will not have heard of WannaCry that hit the NHS a number of years ago. The little virus gets in on one device and it spreads around that network really quickly. So those key technologies, antivirus, malware protection, and anti-isolation, or auto-isolation, sorry, are really critical in that. The next piece is encryption. And again, this is really important in that sort of hyperflex working environment, where all back in the day, we always used to attend school in a classroom. That data did not leave the building. But now with kids taking laptops home, kids having that remote technology and teaching in that hyperflex manner, it's really important those devices are encrypted, because more and more devices, laptops, etc., are now getting lost, and encryption will help you protect that data. So somebody gets that laptop, they can't have access to what's on that data, what's on that hard drive. So that's really critical. The next point is around patching. Now, most businesses will talk about my Microsoft patching. Well, that's just not good enough anymore. So you have to make sure all your software is up to date and patched. And that includes things like Google Chrome and these web browsers that everybody uses. And any really application that has a connection to the internet that can be updated should be done automatically. And finally, and this final point is for business, schools, and in your home life. Most people will be understand what multi-factor authentication is, or MFA or 2FA. It's got a few names for when you do your online banking. You'll be asked to use a separate application to put a card in, or back in the day, you used to put your little credit card in one of the little keypads. More modern, it's delivered via app. It can be delivered by text. But any account that you have for anything should have multi-factor authentication on it. And we have seen within our sort of 900 odd clients in the UK, 90% of the incidents that happen at our clients are where they do not have multi-factor authentication in place. So the biggest takeaway from this today for me is the education, and the biggest technical step that you can do that will hopefully protect you more than the others as such is that multi-factor authentication. If you have an account for something, your password isn't safe enough anymore. Have the apps, have the text come into your phone. It is an absolute must in a modern world. And finally, just touching on the Cyber Essentials scheme. So the Cyber Essentials scheme is a UK government scheme that sets a standard of what good looks like around security. So most of the pieces I've just touched on there are essentials as a part, and are essential as a part of Cyber Essentials. And there's two levels to Cyber Essentials. You have Cyber Essentials, which is a self-certificated scheme, and then you have Cyber Essentials Plus, which is it's quite much more to it, and there's lots of external testing that has to happen. So really, again, with that cost pressures involved, the self-assessment around Cyber Essentials is really critical. And you and schools can be eligible for education skills funding with this accreditation. So again, it's something to look at, A, to protect yourself, but B, to help secure funding for the future. And we can help you with this. One of our services that we offer is Cyber Essentials as a service, where we will come and help you put those security tools in place that will give you those layers to minimize that potential threat, vector into your school. So this is often very driven by business, but schools are just as eligible to sign up for it. And again, it's a really important line in the sand that says we do this to protect our data, our teachers' data, and our students' data, because as Ben touched on earlier on, the amount of data schools now has on us, our kids, and education in general is phenomenal. And securing it and having someone else say that, yeah, this is secure, is a really, really strong message that you can take to the parents of your students, saying, we understand the value of your kids' data and we're here to help you protect it. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. So I sort of alluded earlier about the challenges in the industry around recruitment. And I often think to myself, if I was asked to recruit a teacher, line manage a teacher, educate them, develop them, challenge them, I don't know where I'd start. And I feel sorry for schools where they're expected to do the same for an IT professional. How do you know that they're doing a good job? How do you know they will do a good job? How can you trust them? How do you know what they're doing? You might get a gut feeling that things aren't quite right, but you don't really know. And I think this is where outsourcing can help, because you can go through the right process, the right procurement process, to find somebody that you like, trust, and will deliver on what you want to do. But it allows you to concentrate on the teaching, and actually you pass the IT delivery to a partner. There's some other benefits as well that we can look at. So consistency is one. Having an SLA and a contract and KPIs for a partner to deliver, rather than a person that's going to go and pick and choose what they'd like to do. Also, that consistency includes the information stored on you and your organisation. Often an IT manager will have that information stored on in their head. And so that's a real key. Also, it's not relying on one person. So the ability to monitor systems, as Matt said, to report on cyber security issues, to give you guidance, to bring information from other organisations they've worked with is highly important. And that brings that consistency to you. I think also, just to talk about reducing costs, recruiting an IT manager is far more expensive than outsourcing an IT service to a partner. I think, it's given the feedback around costs and efficiencies, that's something that can really benefit you. In addition to that, as Matt has said, outsourced providers are able to not just give you guidance on IT and fix some stuff, but actually really improve security and compliance. GDPR compliance is not just about IT, but a lot of it starts and ends in around there. So having an IT partner that can do that, rather than relying on someone that may or may not know about data protection and information security, is really important. And then finally, allow you to be better and faster through the use of technology. And actually, people like Sharp that can monitor systems around the clock, that can fix things before you know that they've broken, and it allows technology to work when you need it to, is so important. Fix things before the school starts in a day, so that there aren't any classes that are inconvenienced by a lack of technology. So, without naming individual organisations, there are a number of organisations where we've employed digital transformation projects and reduced costs. We've been able to use advanced tools that Microsoft and Google offer around automation and around how to improve an experience within a school and within a college. Allowing schools and colleges to get their Cyber Essentials accreditations, which ensures funding. And we do that through making sure the schools have got the latest hardware and software, providing advice on where we can develop that as well. Monitoring is so important, as Matt said, to make sure that we know where there are issues and to pick up on them straight away. And then in addition to that, actually not being an IT provider where we just sit and wait for things to go wrong, but really be a proactive partner of that organisation, being consultative, talking to the wider academic environment within the school, not just coming in and having a quick chat with the bursar, but actually really engaging yourselves with the whole of technology within the school. It's so important that IT partners really get to understand the organisation that they support and work with. And then, as I alluded to earlier, really creating an IT roadmap for the future. So not just sitting and waiting for there to be issues or waiting for laptops to finally stop working, but really actually planning that to go forward into the future. I'm just going to pass it over to Steph now, who's going to talk to you about the CBC Lot 2.
Firstly, apologies. I seem to be glitching quite a bit here, and I think I froze. I think I possibly have now. I'm hoping people can hear me.
We can hear you, Steph.
Okay. So just to reiterate some of what we've said before, so with the framework that we have in place is a multifunction devices and digital transformation framework. Lot 2 covers the digital transformation, of which Sharp are one of the suppliers on there. One of the reasons why we would look to promote using our framework in order to go through and do your purchase is we will remove that need for you to do a lengthy tender exercise to get the right suppliers. We've already been through and done that for you. We have terms and conditions that are set up designed to protect you. We can, as I've said, offer that support and assistance. So when you are looking at GDPR, we can ensure that the terms and conditions that you're signing up to are safe and they will protect you where needed. Every supplier that we work with will have gone through a very stringent compliant process in order for them to be awarded onto the framework. So you can be sure that they've gone through financial checks, that they have insurances, they have the right skill set to deal with schools in particular and the wider public sector. All of these things can actually really be a benefit and save so much time, in that you can choose any one of them and you will know that they are going to be safe for you to use. So there's a lot of costs around that, a lot of costs involved that we can actually help to eliminate for a school. The support that we offer as well, as we've said before. So in this, if you were looking to do a direct award with Sharp on their digital transformation, again, we can go through what terms and conditions are set up for you. We can also assist in making sure that you are getting the SLAs and the KPIs that you really need, maybe ask some questions you haven't thought of. We have a team that's available to support on that internally at KCS, and we work very, very closely with all of our suppliers, Sharp included. So we would work with them to make sure that you were getting the best deal. We also support after the event. So if you do go into a contract with Sharp or another supplier, and there are any issues, they're not perhaps adhering to the terms and conditions, or you don't get the service you're paying for, we will actually be that support network for you. We will raise those issues for you, and we will take a lot of the time out of that so that you can actually focus on what you need to, which is doing your job and teaching the children. We can then take on escalation processes and making sure you're getting what you need. Service credits if they're required to compensate you for any issues that you've had. So there is a lot of cost savings involved that we can offer and we can help support with you, which is why we're doing this with Sharp. And we want to, as I said, our aim is to make sure that schools are buying compliantly, that they are safe, that they are protected, and most of all, that it's an easy process. We've heard a lot about the digital transformation here. Very confusing to me with some of it I know because we use it internally ourselves. But for me, it's a case of the procurement side of it, who you choose what framework to choose. That should be the easy side for you. And that's what we're here to make sure happens. Then you can spend the time that you really need to drive down any cost savings, any additional service levels that you really need, and you can focus on that area rather than focusing on filling out multiple forms. We make it as easy as possible for you.
So finally, I'd just like it to open it up to the second poll. If you could please vote in this and just let us know if you'd like us to follow up with you after this webinar so you can learn more about the topics that we've discussed today. Poll should be live now. Okay, I'm conscious of time for the Q&A session, so I'll end that poll there, but I can see to all the people who said yes, as Matt mentioned earlier, we'll be sending you a follow-up email with loads of useful information based off what we've discussed today. Apologies. So yes, these are some of the questions that we've had submitted so far. If you have any more now, I can see one's come through to the Q&A. What does the security audit towards cyber essentials involve? Matt, would you be able to answer that for us, please?
Yeah, more than happy to answer. So it touched on a couple of pieces that Ben and I went through, and this is about that gap analysis. It's to understand where you are with your security, where you are with your digital transformation, what data you have, where it is, where's it stored, and then saying, actually, that bit's not good enough. That bit is good enough. That bit's okay, but we could look to improve it. So really the starting place of that audit is just to understand what that environment currently looks like. And that can then start to build out your roadmap to say, we have this technology, or we have this level of security, we're going to do this about it. And at the end goal is to meet the standards set out in Cyber Essentials. So it's a consultative piece of work, it's a two-page piece of work, understanding, and then us working with you, for example, to start recommending what you need to go and do to better protect yourself and meet the standards set within Cyber Essentials.
Okay. And the other question that we had submitted was, what is the greatest threat to organisations who don't understand the importance of cybersecurity?
Yeah, great question. And it's, for me, it's that we as the humans are the weakest link. Without wanting to sort of sound too Anne Robinson there, it's the easiest way into any organisation is through the people. It used to be there was no technology, no security in place. So that was an easy mechanism. But the technology out there now that's available for smaller organizations is brilliant. It's never 100%, but it is brilliant. And so is, again, Swiss cheese analogy, it's about having multiple layers and having our teams and our teaching staff and our students as well aware that they are the weakest link. And that not having that end user education in place is the greatest threat, because it's also the easiest thing to exploit.
I think it's worth adding to that, Matt, as well, that a lot of this technology is actually free.
Yeah.
A lot of it you don't actually have to pay for. So once it's in, it's there.
Yeah. If you look at, for example, the Microsoft stack of technologies, Microsoft 365, which schools get very favorable pricing as a not-for-profit organization. Multi-factor authentication is included with that. Businesses choose not to turn it on for a various number of reasons, but just enabling that is a level of security that is a humongous step forward. Again, it's not infallible. No technology is infallible. We do have examples of where someone gets that little pop-up on their phone that says, would you like to access this? And they click yes, although they didn't trigger that in the first place. So not infallible, but that's where education really supports technology in use. And again, as Ben said, it's using a lot of these technologies that are already available to you.
Perfect. I think with 1 minute to go, it's probably best to just move on to the final slide, which is just regarding the follow-up information that you can expect. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be sending out an email with useful links to further information that you can use to polish up on your cybersecurity, procurement, digital transformation. So you can all expect that in your inbox by tomorrow. And alternatively, to learn anything more directly from KCS Procurement Services, their information is there. You can speak to a member of their team. I think that's all for today. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and thanks to the panelists as well for taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you all.